Maybe you, this seems
Well,
like
I'm just going to pick up and elaborate on a couple of interesting things that have been said by Nancy and by Joe. And of course, from my perspective, I completely agree that people who travel are exposing themselves to the opportunity of being better citizens in their own communities, because it really does transform your life and the way that you think about issues in your day-to-day life. And I do also often wonder how many gallons of fuel are being consumed when I'm sitting on planes, but it wouldn't be possible for me to do my job and for the organization to play a meaningful role without hands-on personal experience with the places themselves and the people that we work with. And it's not just the authenticity of the experience, which I think is what travel is all about. It's really about engagement, which is a point that Joe made. Travel is not just transformative for people who travel, it's also transformative for the places they travel to. And New York would suffer a lot if we didn't have tourism, and Paris and those storied places that you think of as some of the world's most beautiful places, but it's a very significant part of the economy. But we tend to focus on alternative places that have not necessarily been put on the map. And Chettinad is an example. This is a site that was nominated to something called the World Monuments Watch List that highlights sites that are in need of more strenuous protection and conservation. And when it was nominated, we had a Sri Lankan on our panel who said, "Oh, isn't this interesting? I thought this was a mythical place because we always heard about Chettinad as the origin of Chetnik. But I never knew it existed, and here it is on the map. And it's all full of beautiful, beautiful houses. And so that's how just knowledge can transform the way you think. I do think that that there are problems with mass tourism, and that the goal of this industry should be to transform people into knowledgeable and engaged travelers, and just learning about a place by being there and appreciating it and seeking it out. Doing your research before you go is, I think, a way of contributing. And while I think it's too bad that the U.S. takes positions that some of us regret having to do with the environment, it seems to me that the tourism industry is transforming tourism. And it's been amazing to me over the course of this process of being on your jury to see how many big hotel chains have nominated themselves for their environmental action, how many big airlines have and airports have been part of this process. And I'm impressed by the extent of the commitment on the part of all these winners of these awards. Particularly, it's not so difficult for someone in the nonprofit sector to imagine how it could benefit your organization to get a Global Vision Award, but for people in the industry, there's a real expense and commitment to a long-term standard involved, and I really want to commend everybody who does that, because I think it's an impressive thing, and I think it's what will make a difference in travelers' perception of what they're doing.
Can I just say one more thing that which is one of the things that a number of the people who've gotten awards and nominated over the years that I think is very important is the community involvement that they've had, and particularly when you're in some of the less developed countries, and you're one of the problems in many of these places is creating jobs and economic opportunity, and to do it in a way that doesn't exploit them, to actually lead to education, to lead them to better lives. And in many of the more remote places, the developing countries, these have had very big impacts on the local communities, and set examples of it. So that's a dimension.
I was just thinking so much about before how that plays into, everyone's asking Joe a lot about inequality these days because of the Occupy Wall Street, and quite an interesting, did I
No,
interrupt you?
It creates a
exactly
future
right.
for some
Yeah.
fragile places that we would like to see
We
survive
go there and spend
as
our
they are
money.
with their cultures.
Yeah,
And,
rather than
care-
emptying out, which is the alternative, and,
That's right.
and you know that otherwise they're gonna be isolated and poor.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about also is, yes, obviously mass tourism has its drawbacks, but I've been so struck over the years by as soon as countries or people get a certain level of income, the first thing they want to do is travel. I remember lunching with Chinese factory workers in Shanghai in the early 90s, and they said, we're buying a computer for our kids, and we're all going on vacation to Burma. And I lived in Hanoi in the 90s as well, during the Asian crisis, and so many of the Vietnamese I knew, the second they get any money, it's obviously send their kids to Australia or the United States for an education, but it's also go on vacation, visit Thailand, visit Singapore, and I guess that's something you must think about all the time with what's happening with China now. We're getting this mass tourism